Okay. All right. Well, thank y'all both for coming, and if we have other people that can just join us. But this is the volunteer orientation. We're thinking about actually holding these monthly, so if you feel like you ever need a refresher, you should have one to come back to. This is actually the first time I'm giving the volunteer orientation, so we're going to just go with it. This is Michelle Flores, like I introduced y'all earlier. She's in charge of the internship part of our orientation and a part of our program. So she's here if you have any questions, for her. But like I said earlier, it's basically going to be the same process. You'll just call different people if you need help. You don't answer to us. You just ask us if you need anything. Before we get started, we're really laid back here. I kind of want to get to know why you thought about us as somewhere that you'd like to spend some time. A lot of us I have personal reasons for being involved with the museum. My father was killed in Vietnam. He's an OV-10 pilot and presented the Medal of Honor when he died. So I like to be here. This is about who he was, and the people that started the museum did the same things that he did in the war. So it kind of makes me feel at home to be here. Michelle is just very appreciative of her service people, and she just wants to kind of give back to the community. So she's here, and she's a friend of mine, so it helped that I kind of drug her here one day, and then it took. So she's now very, very involved. Don, he's prior military, so I mean, he just everybody here has a story, and they have a reason for being here. We do have quite a few that had no tie to the military, no tie to the OV-10, nothing. They just found us and liked us, so they wanted to be part of us. So sometimes that's all it is you're just looking for a home. So if you can just say your name and kind of what brought you here, and we'll start with you, Maggie.
My name's Maggie Bush. I go to TCU, and I went to a expo, and there was a booth set up for the Aviation Museum. So I filled out some information and got an email, but my father-in-law is actually was in Vietnam, so whenever I told him I was going to come talk to you all about this, he was really excited for me and said that it's a great thing, and he wants to hear more about it. So that connection is really fun.
Yeah. Is he local?
No, he lives in Oregon.
Okay.
Well, he used to live in Texas, but they moved back up to Oregon.
Well, whenever they come visit, you should bring him out.
Yeah, he would really love that.
Okay. Very good. Thank
you. I'm Darren Gray. I've been in aviation since '82. I've done just a little bit of everything in the industry. Pilot, flight instructor, and aircraft mechanic. And currently I'm a ground systems instructor for Envoy Airlines on the Embraer 140 and 145. And I was on when I was living up there in Wichita, I was on the gear and hydraulics team for the B-29 Doctor, trying to get off the ground for about almost 7 years.
Nice.
That's been quite a few years ago, though. But, anyway, that's...
Love of aviation. So that's good. That's perfect. So we get a lot of that, where it's just kind of a mixed bag. Everybody has their own reason for being here. So, we'll get started. What we're going to do is we're going to go through this, and we're going to go through just a little introduction, background about the place, what our core values are, our different partners and affiliations with the museum. We're actually growing. There's a lot of them. Various achievements that we want to highlight and tell you about, what our vision is, and we'll go through a kind of a quick tour of the facility so that you can kind of see what we have. And I can't find the clicker, so I'm using the mouse. So this is us. This is where you are. You are right there in this little building, sitting right about there. And this is our museum. So you'll see this is what we call our petting zoo. So everything outside of the building on the yard, that's our petting zoo. We call it that because you are able to get up and actually touch the aircraft. We don't let them get in the aircraft. There are certain days that we'll have open cockpit days that we'll open a cockpit and let people get in and stuff like that. But generally everything is closed down, but they can get up and touch it. So we call it the petting zoo. The Bronco Beginning. This is a Bronco. This is the OV-10 Bronco. It was an airplane, forward air controlling airplane. So it was used in Vietnam. It's being used again now overseas. So you can see stories in the news right now about OV-10s. It's the same OV-10. In 1997, the OV-10 Bronco Association was founded. I'm currently the president of the OV-10 Bronco Association. I'm trying to get more involved in that. I'm busy. And then up here, 2002, we expanded the scope because we found that the Bronco was such a specified group of people. There's not very many that flew the OV-10 Bronco or worked on it. So we opened it up to all forward air controllers, which included several other aircrafts, and even on the ground. So we did that. And then in 2005, began more of an emphasis on a veteran-based air museum. So that's when we changed our name to the Veterans Memorial Air Park. And then from there, we go all over the page. From there is 2010. We began working with the Historic Aviation Preservation Program, and we still do a lot of work with that, and trying to catalog all of our aviation items and collections. And in 2013, we've been rebranded to the Fort Worth Aviation Museum, which is what we are now. We are the first of the North Texas area to be an actual home for aviation items, aviation stories, and what brings aviation to North Texas and how we can continue the pride in that. So, and you'll find later that, you might think of Fort Worth as like a cow town, but that went away a long time ago. PI. So we use PI, preservation, inspiration, and education. Those are our core values. So we try to preserve aviation history. We try to preserve the artifacts of aviation history. We try to inspire especially young kids, to become pilots. We have our flight simulator that they can get in. And we do a lot of hands-on things. They can have birthday parties here. They can do Cub Scouts, Civil Air Patrol, all of those things. So they get very involved. And then education, we go out to the colleges and to high schools and elementary schools to try to kind of spread the word and hopefully get people to come in to visit, which it works. So Maggie's here because of it. Petting zoo. So like I told you before, anything outside on the grass that's considered in the petting zoo. You can get up close and touch a blue angel, and that's really exciting to a lot of people. So we do have the blue angel. And then we have way back from World War II. I don't know if you can see that. So we have that, the Vultee, the BT-13, the Blue Angel, and we have a whole bunch of other ones out on the yard. But you can get up there and get kind of close and personal. And we have tour guides that take you around and tell you all about the airplanes. Okay. So I'm going to do like that. Okay. Many ways, many stories. So even just us bringing a new airplane in to the yard brings so many people behind it. Because if you can imagine seeing the Blue Angel going down the road from Florida to here, because this is how it was transported. It just has a following of its own. So, they just have different ways of bringing them in. You can load them like that, huge aircraft. You can bring them on the back of a tow truck, on the back of a flatbed. And all of this is done through volunteer hours. So all of these, like whenever we acquire an aircraft and we have to go get it, it's all volunteer. So you'll have people that just take off work, take part of their vacation days, and they drive over to Florida and bring a plane back. All right, so this is before restoration. When we get some of the aircraft, they're in really bad shape. So this is before, and then that's after. And all of this is volunteer. So when we go for a little tour around the place, you'll see guys working out at the shop. That's what they're doing right now, is putting planes together. That's before, and that's after. It's the same aircraft. Our goal is to put it back to the way that it would have been when it was in service. So the story of aviation in Fort Worth starts way back on January 12th, 1911. Over by Montgomery Plaza in Fort Worth, they're building a new park, and it's going to be First Flight Park. We're part of that. So there's a display in the museum that I'll show you. But we're part of that, and the reason we're part of it is because we did a lot of the research to find out where the very first flight was that took off in Fort Worth, and we found it, and it was right there on this patch of land over by some apartments. So they're actually building a park to commemorate that. So it started January 12, 1911, and that's kind of where the history of Fort Worth Aviation took place. All right, let's see. Let me just get all these up so I know what I'm talking about. So many. Okay, let's just try it right there. Okay. So a lot of people don't think that aviation really is about North Texas, but it really, really is. And if you think about it, we have so many aircraft that were built in our area, just in Fort Worth. So the first flight took place. You have the first inaugural flights taking place, and they come in through Texas. You have the dirigibles that are part of the blimps, and all of those took place here in Fort Worth. And more pictures. Let me get all these pictures. So all of this takes place in Fort Worth. And so right here, like I was saying, that people tend to think that Fort Worth is cattle driven. Well, that stopped back at the 1900s. And really, primarily, we don't do a lot of cattle drives anymore unless you're just there at 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoons, right? Cotton stopped in 1920s. Lumber stopped at about 1935. And then around 1900, all the way to 1983 or so, was oil. But if you look at us, we are still going strong, and you'll see this display. And this display was the bane of many volunteers here because we had to count each individual little bead. It had to be accurate. So, but in 1941, you can see the planes, 42, and then up in here, it's hard to read the dates, 69. So like right in here was Vietnam. If you see all of those planes that were built, maintenance, maintained, whatever, through here, through Fort Worth. So, and we're still going strong. So this was up until 2012. And now if we were to add the next 4 rings, we'd probably have quite a bit more. So Fort Worth is really, really big. 68,000 aircraft and counting, and that was as of 2012. Okay, so over 600,000 jobs. 1 in 5 work in the aviation field. So there's 2 of you right here, and 1 of you works in the aviation field. So that's kind of how that works. Total economic output, $40 billion a year. DFW served 62.9 million passengers in 2013. 648,000 tons of cargo. So as you can see, aviation's huge in our area. There's no doubt about it, and so we need to embrace that, and we need to preserve that history. And then this kind of gives you a little scale. All the beads, they actually meant something, so we weren't just picking, so the scale is down here, and you'll see this on the tour. So you can look at all the red ones, and those are foreign. Not very many red in there. Let's find the silver. There's Air Force. And look at all the silver. And green, Army Air Corps. All the green. So this just kind of tells you what each one stands for and how many there were. Okay, programs and events. Whoops, come back. Okay, there we go. So like we were talking about before, the programs and events, part of our function is not just to come to the museum. I volunteer on Saturdays from 9 to 1. That's just how I do it. I'm here 9 to 1 on Saturdays. That's not what we're about. What we're about are the people that go to TCU and set up the booth and bring in, new volunteers and new interest. Even we get a lot of people that just come through the museum because they saw us at the booth, at the TCU fair. So we do a lot of stuff. We do Toys for Tots during the holidays. Do a lot of reunions, which are really kind of special to a lot of the guys here. They get together with their old buddies. We do fly-ins. So we have helicopters that'll come in. We have the new OV-10s that are being outfitted now. They came in one time. We do air shows. We're working right now on Hops and Props, which Michelle can tell you guys about. We need lots of volunteers for Hops and Props, so regardless of what you do, if you can come back and help us with Hops and Props, that'd be great. And youth programs like we talked about with Civil Air Patrol and the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, just whoever wants to come out. And marketing. With our marketing, obviously, we market toward vets and aviation fans, but we're trying to bring in any of the seniors that have children, grandchildren that want to share their stories. Then we market to them, families, that have the young kids. So we try to segment that population, but we also try to target very, in a smart way. We try to target the right people. But basically, we're open to any position, to any group of people, anybody that's interested in aviation. But the vets do play a very large portion. All right, and our manpower. This is our manpower. So we have obviously the volunteers, and that's how we have one paid employee, and that's the director of the museum. And we have her because we've grown so much that in order for us to continue to acquire new aircraft, there were some guidelines that needed to be met and regulations that needed to be followed. So we hired a director of museums so that she can kind of keep us in line and keep us going and make sure that everything is compliant and everything is good. So we have one paid person. And then we have the rest of us are all volunteers, everybody. He's a volunteer, we're a volunteer, everybody. We have affinity groups and we have collaborations between those groups. So TCU, or we have the B-36 Peacemakers. They have a display set up in the corner of our museum, but they are a very, very big part of our group. So they're usually here on Wednesdays. So if you're interested in the B-36 and its history, then the B-36 groups tend to man the museum on Wednesdays, and they're here. North Texas Aviation Centennial, so we're part of all of this. We're a Blue Star Museum, which means that we support our veterans and their families. We do work through UNT, TCU, TCC, UTA, UTD, and the list is growing, and many high schools as well. And achievements. This is the first flight park that I was talking to you guys about. So this is a huge achievement for North Texas, and many, many people didn't even know that the first flight took place right down the street. It's just right there. So this is what it's going to look like. This is a drawing, a little mock-up of what it'll look like. You'll see this plaque there, and then we took this picture whenever we did the little dedication. But so we're proud to be part of that. Eamon Carter's Travel Air 5000 came through Fort Worth. These are all of our affiliations. Fort Worth Aviation Museum being in the center, and then we're affiliated, and we have different programs that we work with all of the different places, including the Smithsonian and several of the colleges and high schools in the area. And partnerships. Bell Helicopter. You'll see a lot of things that are on loan from Bell Helicopter. The Irving Independent School District, TCU. Tarrant County, Blue Star Museum. So we think we have a pretty good basis for continuing aviation history in this area. And our vision is obviously to bring all of this to the public. You would be surprised how many times people will stop in and they'll say, I live 2 streets over. I've seen you guys for years, and I thought it was just a place people worked on aircraft. I didn't think it was an actual museum. Well, we're in a museum, and we want them to come in. So that's kind of our vision, is to just display the heritage, educate everybody. Hopefully it will put more people into the aviation business as they get older. And we want that to happen. And we also want volunteers and interns. And these are the growth opportunities. So growth opportunities, we need help with increasing our involvement with schools, whether it's high schools or colleges. The affinity groups, bringing more groups in with us, affiliation with different organizations, college, universities, youth groups, any of those things. We need to, the Alliance Air Show, that's something that we're actually pretty proud of it, because now they've come to us and want us to kind of head up the discovery zone, is what they're calling it. So we've become a lot more involved with the Alliance Air Show. So pretty proud of that. So these are the different ways that we can use volunteers. And if there's a different one that you can do, then we just add it. That we're not going to turn anybody down. We need help. If you have a love of aviation, if you have a love of furthering your own education, then we want you here. So you can be a docent, which is a tour guide. You can work with aircraft mechanics if you want to. You can do a gift shop. You can be administrative support, collection management, fundraising, work with social media, the Facebook and stuff like that. Michelle tends to keep up a lot with our Facebook, as does the director of the museum. But we need all of that. And this is what you'll see. You'll see North Texas aviation history. You'll see 24 and counting warbirds. You'll have friendly guides and military and forward air controlling history. Preservation, inspiration, and education, like we talked about earlier. It's our pie theory. Thank you. Okay, so that is our presentation. The next part of the presentation would be, do you have any questions? And then from there, we're going to take a tour. Any questions? Okay, then we can start the tour. All right, I'm going to go with this.